Welcome to the NAUI 2025 Board of Directors election campaign. In this series, we're introducing you to the individuals running for one of the 3 available seats on the NAUI Board of Directors. Each candidate was asked the same 8 questions compiled by the NAUI Elections Committee. Their answers reflect their leadership style, values, and vision for the future of NAUI. We'll be interviewing each candidate one at a time, so let's meet our first candidate. Question number 1. Respectfully, how do you ensure accountability and transparency in board decision-making?
Well, I think that decisions should be visible, explainable, and tied to NAUI's mission. I think that if we're going to be transparent, assuming that it doesn't interfere with any sort of obligation to adhere to the non-disclosure agreements, I think that, publishing board decisions and rationales in accessible formats to members is good. Open communication channels, right? Town halls, newsletters, Q&A sessions, that sort of thing. For example, at Black Flag, we have kind of a round table type of leadership organization, as in there's always room for new ideas. Jesse Cole, the founder of the Savannah Bananas, has a theory about, always be open to ideas. There's nothing wrong with trying something, because then that's the only way you can figure out if it works or it doesn't. So every major decision that we make, we run it by pretty much everybody and get input from all sources. That way we've got all of the information that we possibly can, and that way we can make the most informed decision.
Question number 2. How do you manage potential conflicts of interest within a board or organization?
Well, I think that integrity and fairness always come first, right? So with that, we need to be transparent. We need to disclose conflicts immediately. That way, if there is an issue, then if we go ahead and talk about it and get it over with, then we don't have to, skirt around things. I think that recusal, when it comes to certain decisions, stepping back and saying, hey, look, I think that I'm probably not the person to help with this decision because it conflicts, right? Could be, when a personal or a business interest could influence decisions, and recognizing that and being able to step back and say, hey, I think that my decision is biased, or, just being able to separate that, I know that it's critical to separate personal and business from organizational, leadership, right? It's tough as a business owner to separate your personal and the business relationship. I find myself having to put my business hat on sometimes, and then I have to put my personal hat on sometimes, and then I have to put on the leadership hat sometimes. And it is tough, but it's doable. And I think that clear written conflict of interest procedures are also important. Having that laid out so that there can't be any question about how that goes in the real world is really important. That way we have a guideline. We have something to follow.
Question number 3. What strategies would you recommend for diversifying NAUI Worldwide's revenue streams?
That's a great question. I think that right now we get a lot of our money from traditional course fees, selling the e-learning codes and the membership dues and, the crew packs and stuff like that. Right? But I really feel that we have a huge potential to diversify our revenue streams. We really do. Digital education products that maybe are outside of Scuba, that we can develop for other organizations, because we're good at that. We can develop learning materials. Just give us the subject matter and we can develop you a course, for e-learning. Encouraging the youth and family programs to engage new demographics. I know that we recently went through the process of developing a youth program, and I think that's great. I really, really do. I think that unfortunately, a lot of what we deal with is a demographic that isn't young people. And I think that that's a market that we're missing. I really, really do. Especially college age people who maybe they don't have the, disposable income that, is kind of our target demographic for Scuba. But what they do have is a sense of adventure, and they want to capitalize on that when they're young. I think stuff like being able to sell things in the NAUI store, like the t-shirts, I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. I think that there's definitely room for other sort of swag that's out there that can be sold. I think that becoming intertwined with some of the newer emerging technologies. I think that that's really important. Wholeheartedly accepting and adopting things that can make scuba better. I think that's really important for us to be on the forefront of the new technology, because I feel like if we just stand back and we do things the way that we've always done them, then we're going to stay in the same spot. That applies to a lot of different things, just in life in general. If you stay put, you're going to stay put. I think that something as a business owner that I think that now we could do in their e-learning materials might be to encourage a sales. Within the e-learning materials, I know that there are a couple of agencies out there that really encourage, like, hey, buying your gear is the best option. I know that there are a couple of e-learning platforms that definitely adhere to that message, more so than Naui does. Now, does that diversify Naui's income stream? I hear that argument. But if more people are using Naui materials because as a business owner, they're encouraging the students to make gear purchases, then I think that more people will lean towards using Naui as a medium to help them drive sales. And if you help the dive shops drive sales, then you help drive the sales of the e-learning materials, because they're gonna want to use you. Ecotourism and conservation trips. I really feel like Naui could definitely get on board with that kind of stuff, posting those kinds of trips that dive shops that are Naui affiliated and saying, hey, look, this dive shop is offering some sort of, conservation trip or an ecotourism trip that, everybody can benefit from, and trying to recruit more people to engage in that sort of thing. Partnerships with like aquariums, universities, corporate wellness programs, that sort of thing. I really feel like partnerships in that regard, where we develop or we provide the training materials for more organizations that are very official, make us look really good. I know that we do things for the military. I know that at the Florida Aquarium, Naui is a big deal. More of that, the more we can get our name out there, and the more official groups that are using Naui training materials as the basis of their training, I think that just looks good, and it attracts more people to utilize Naui.
Question number 4. How would you approach fundraising in support of Naui's programs and long-term goals?
Okay, that's a good question. I think that people respond to a personal approach. We all scroll on Instagram and TikTok and make a personal connection with people, and then we follow them, right? So, for instance, there are a number of people, social media presences that I feel connected with on a personal level, because they're real and they're raw, and they seem human. And I think that a huge part of that is video. So I think that storytelling, using member-driven campaigns to encourage like donations, or, stuff that like campaigns for scholarships, stuff like that, especially as a nonprofit organization, that really makes us look good to the public. Building partnerships with like environmental, nonprofit organizations, maybe corporate sponsorships for stuff like coral restoration, right? There are, pool building companies, for instance, that, need to donate materials to things to have a tax write-off at the end of the year, or maybe they need to donate funding to Just Cause, right? If now he gets on board with that sort of thing, and they say, hey, look, we're doing these things for the environment, it encourages people to donate money, right? Because they say, okay, well, that's good. That's a good cause. We're going to donate our money to that, because truth be told, at the end of the year, they need a tax write-off. And just highlight those tax deductible opportunities, So, hey, look, we, get somebody on video that shares a compelling story, tied to contributions. Hey, look, we love doing the coral restoration thing, and we've had some huge success because people enjoy doing that. They love to give back, and especially as divers, we're sort of the first line of defense when it comes to ocean conservation. And sharing those stories in a format that makes people connect to Naui members, I think is super important. I think that is something that we're missing out on in the organization. More personal stories, interviews, podcasts, in any sort of, where they can feel like a Naui professional is a human being that is, just like the rest of us, and is out there doing good stuff. That's that's how I feel like we can get more fundraising, is to develop, something personal on video that helps people relate on a personal level.
Question number 5. With dive safety through education being one of NAUI's mantras, how have you effectively communicated safety and training standards to a broad audience?
Good question. So safety is a culture. It's not just a checklist. I, I know, through my shop, we embed safety into every conversation, right? The students hear it in the e-learning. They hear it in post-certification guidance. For instance, we have a list of, hey, here's the top 10 dive sites that beginner divers, are these are sites that beginner divers can do, that really encourage them to get out there and do something that's not outside of their training. So for instance, when we do open water training, we're not encouraging our open water students to go over to Jupiter and jump off a boat in ripping current in 90 feet of water. We tell them not to do that, because that's outside of your training. Help them realize what their comfort envelope is, and then encourage them to stay within that. But if they want to expand that comfort envelope, then obviously continuing education is the way to do that. And plus, let's be real, all the cool dives are, an advanced open water certification, right? You want to go see the Spiegel Grove? Well, you got to be nitrox and advanced. It's really simple. But, stuff that we can do as instructors, NAUI professionals, the organization itself, again, I'm going to go right back to using social media and YouTube and stuff like that, blogs, right? Especially video, because I feel like that helps people connect on a personal level. Making safety accessible and engaging. That's the other half of it, right? So nobody wants to listen to some dude drone on about, oh, well, this is what you should do if you want to be safe. No, it needs to be fun. It needs to be engaging. It needs to be, you know, um, quick-witted, that kind of stuff, but also storytelling. Once again, let's go back to storytelling, using those real world examples of how, safety protocols have totally, saved lives. We all know of a few YouTube channels that are out there. They're scuba related. And I'm sure that most of us have seen some of those reaction videos to safety issues, right? That's not what I'm encouraging. I'm encouraging an approach that, instead of reacting to an event, let's do more prevention than anything, Let's make a series of YouTube videos that talks about just tiny little safety points that can make that dive 1 little % safer than the last one, and give real world examples. For instance, having communications in a full face mask, right? It can absolutely give you an advantage safety wise, because if for no other reason, you can communicate with your student, but also you can communicate with a dive master. Might be occupied doing, something with a student or whatever, but either way, if I need to communicate to a dive master and I have the technology to do so, it certainly increases the safety margin. Instead of having to bang on my tank and then get their attention and then fabricate a set of hand signals or write on a slate, press a button, that kind of stuff. And then consistency, right? I think that being consistent with our message of safety, which I think we are, we're really consistent with that. Dive safety through education is within all of our materials, and I'm certain that other instructors are out there saying the same thing. Hey, do you want to be a safer diver? Well, the way to do that is to continue your education. It's really simple.
Question number 6. How would you leverage storytelling to raise awareness about NAUI's mission and values?
Well, we've sort of already touched on this a little bit, right? I'm a huge fan of storytelling. I'll go back to the people you follow on TikTok. For instance, I follow a couple that just have funny videos about, their relationship, right? They act like each other, and it's hilarious. It's very real, but it's something that I connect to. They don't feel like they're not human like us. They feel like a normal person. And we all connect to that sort of thing. Personal dive stories, once again, with the videos that highlight community, conservation, that sort of thing, success stories when it comes to, or just even experience stories, interviewing people that get to participate in stuff like beach cleanups or coral restoration and just say, hey, tell us about your experience. Did you enjoy that? Like, did you get anything out of it? Was it cool? Are you excited about coming and doing it again? And again, we've got to make these things exciting because we want to encourage people to get excited about, our values and our mission and all of that, right? We could spotlight certain instructors, students, shop owners, various, members of the board. I know that there are a couple of members of the board that have some organizations that they run. We have a ton of potential to interview these people that are both running the organization and who are participating in the organization for success stories, leveraging those videos in order to keep people excited about our core missions and values.
Question number 7. How would you advocate for environmentally responsible practices within NAUI programs and operations?
Let's start with the fact that, let's be real. Divers are the first line of defense when it comes to ocean conservation. And the reason for that is because we're the only ones that put eyes on it. You're not going to get an underwater video from someone who's not a diver. You're not going to get those National Geographic documentaries from somebody who's not a diver. So if we want to raise awareness, we should be a leader in sustainable diving. We absolutely should. I know that at one point now we had a green initiative, and I know that has sort of fallen to the wayside. And I feel that is an important part of what we need to do as an organization. Because here's the thing, if we're not putting that into our message with our brand new divers, then who are they going to hear it from? Why would they care unless the people who are professionals go out there and say, hey, we care, and here's why you should care. Because if we don't do that, then guess what? Our industry is going to disappear. Because if there's nothing to see in the ocean, let's really nothing for people to do there, is there? Zero plastic initiatives for events, Now we worldwide puts on an event. I know that here in the Tampa area we have something called Gasparilla, which is just a giant parade where there's debauchery, right? And people throw all kinds of plastic into the bay. And there are totally groups out there that know that this happens, that get out into the bay afterwards, and they're over there cleaning up all that plastic. Why? We should totally be jumping on that, right? We should be a leader in that and say, hey, look, we know that there's plastic going into the ocean. Obviously, we're not going to throw the stuff in, but who's going to get it out? If it's not us, it's got to be us. Well, we've got to figure out a way for NAUI to be a leader in these conservation initiatives. But also, I feel that now we should be supporting dive shops in adopting, eco certifications. So, for instance, our coral restoration diver certification is one that I wrote. That is something that I feel that now we could adopt as a specialty certification, just as a worldwide option. Obviously, we don't want to go down the road of a couple of other agencies where you can get a certification in underwater basket weaving, but it's just a little star sticker. Hey, you're a beach cleanup diver. You're an eco diver. You're a coral restoration diver. Thanks for coming and supporting that sort of thing. Definitely developing materials that both, and we totally do encourage, the conservation in our e-learning, but I definitely feel that it could be more than what it is, especially with revamping something like the Green Diver Initiative. We've all got to stop talking about it, and we got to start walking about it. Dive shop owners, let's encourage them to develop these kinds of trips and support them in whatever way we can, whether that be through materials or promoting these things or whatever.
Question number 8. What are your thoughts on the role of dive training organizations in climate action and ocean conservation?
Well, we have sort of touched on this. I think we all know how I feel about this. But to answer the question, dive agencies and instructors are the ones that shape the mindsets of thousands of divers every year. It's definitely part of our open water presentation at Black Flag. We at the very end, one of our last slides in our presentation is all about conservation and how you've got to give back. If we don't do something, then your kids and their kids are not going to be able to enjoy it the way that we do. Putting that in their mind, we're not gonna have people have that mindset, right? I know that my scuba instructor from 20 years ago instilled that in me, and now as a dive shop owner, many years later, it's one of the things that we absolutely is part of our main mission. So without that, without my instructor having, planted that seed early on, then would I be doing this today? I don't know. Maybe, but I think that it's really, really important for us as an agency and us as instructors, because we're stewards of the ocean, right? It's how we make our living. A lot of us are in it because we love the ocean. Maybe we could put required conservation modules, right, in all training levels, right? If we're in the habit of putting something in all training levels, like reviewing basic scuba skills, why not also make sure that there's a required conservation module in all training levels? And I do know that now we partnered with 4Ocean to expand our reach with global climate, slash uh, ocean organizations out there, right? And I think that's great. I think that's really, really important. Our main message, our that we're sending out to the membership and to our divers that we train, is that conservation really isn't separate from diving. It's essential, right? Otherwise, how do we ensure that it's there for future generations?